on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson, coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, and we are awaiting the reveal of the college football playoff for the 2023 season. So, thanks to everybody who tuned into the Instant Reaction Show last night. We had a massive audience, a lot more continuing to go back where we discussed sort of the big philosophical questions that the selection committee has to answer, in addition to, breaking down actual games. It was pretty good. So, Danny, as we are nearing, we're going to end up reacting to this live. You'll probably hit a break and then do some good matchup breakdowns on the other side of this. So before we know who ends up making it into those 4 spots, Danny, how are you feeling? I mean, it's been a conversation. It has been a hot debate. Final word before we find out who's actually in.
I'm genuinely pissed off. I hate this. I don't like that somebody's going to get screwed, because we can all agree on that. A team that is deserving, best, whatever term you want to use. And we've sat here for 10 years, maybe even for 25, like since the BCS was created, and we've been okay with that. And that drives me nuts. And somehow that this debate and all this yelling and back and forth is supposedly good for the sport. The sport is good enough. It has rivalries. It has tradition. It has passionate fans. We don't need this garbage. And some of those players that feel like they've earned their way in on some team, whether it's Bama, Florida State, Texas, Georgia, whatever team that's on the outside looking in, is going to get left brokenhearted. Like, it's one thing for me to be upset, Bud to be upset, anybody, like, whatever. We'll get over it. But those guys laid their lives on the line for it, and they're going to have to sit at home and watch the championship be played. It's a disgrace.
I think Georgia I would leave out of that conversation. You had a chance, right? I mean, I think that if we are truly trying to draw a line, that Georgia losing to Alabama in a game that was just a field goal, but Georgia played really well out the gate. You lost in the championship game. They have often argued that the conference championship games are the play-in to the playoff. So guess what? They were in the play-in and they lost. You're out. You go home. I mean, there is the Kirby Smart politicking for his fan base and for his players. But I think you talk to Kirby 2 months from now, they'll be like, we wanted to be in the playoff. We should have beat Alabama. We weren't healthy enough, and we didn't play well enough. So this to me, we've got 5 conference champions that are all undefeated or have 1 loss, 5 Power 5 conference champions for 4 spots. So, somebody, Danny, to your point, there are players that are going to be just gutted by what's about to happen. But I think that's where I draw the line. No Ohio State, no Georgia. I think that's the group that we're looking at. We're going to really have some hearts broken.
But if those are the best teams, shouldn't they be in?
Right.
No. Where do we draw the arbitrary line, right? Like, from a power rating standpoint.
Oh, no. We're not doing power ratings.
No, that's kind of the argument, right? Like,
power ratings said Oregon was the Pac-12 champion.
Exactly. Right. You're making the point, Chip.
Power rating said Georgia was the SEC champion.
Right.
Power rating, it's
so messed up.
Let's be real. The only reason Georgia is still part of the quote-unquote debate and conversation is because of what it's done in previous years. But like you mentioned,
2-time reigning champion, 29 wins in a row.
And again, if we're doing it if we didn't play any games and we're just doing it off power ratings, I would have Georgia as the best team in the country. I still think Georgia is the best team in the country, even though it lost to Alabama yesterday. But it didn't win its conference. And in this format, in this system, like you were saying, Chip, if there are 3 undefeated Power 5 champions and there are 2 Power 5 champions with 1 loss, a 1-loss non-conference champion should not be part of the conversation. So just like Ohio State isn't part of the conversation, Georgia shouldn't be either.
And then you add the twist, which is really what I think the only thing the committee can do to leave Florida State out is to reference the quarterback situation. Because if you go resumes, Florida State's resume is just as good as anybody out there. And I would say it's better than Michigan's. Like, I mean, like if you went from 13 games, not just 2 games, which is really all Michigan played, Florida State would have a better resume. And if you stack it up against Bama's, they have a common opponent that nobody's bringing up. Like they did both at LSU.
Yeah.
In Bama and Florida State. And Florida State won on neutral versus a healthy LSU by 3 touchdowns. Bama, won by 2 touchdowns at home, in which Jaden Daniels was going off on them and then got knocked out of the game. Like all this, it drives me nuts because we have to do this. Like I felt embarrassed for Kirby Smart. Not he had to. It was the same thing Nick Saban did last year. It's embarrassing for those guys to tarnish their legacy by having to go out there and grovel and try to make their case. It's awful.
I mean, it's politicking, right?
Yeah, but it's embarrassing. Leave the politicians in
DC.
DC.
Right? Yeah, that's why I don't like the playoff. I mean, I originally wanted it back in the BCS era when I thought, okay, this is stupid. Just have 2 teams. Let's get to the playoff. Now we've had the playoff for a decade. I think it's dumber than the BCS was. I think it's ruined the sport. I think it's ruined the conversation around the sport because instead of talking about like that's the one thing I was proud about with our show last night is we didn't spend the entire time debating this. We talked about the games. I think the playoff is turning the sport to not talking about anything that happens in the sport. It's just everybody yelling about what they want to happen now.
Maybe that changes with 12.
Maybe.
I hope so.
Also, Danny, like from the jump, yeah, I remember, I mean, everyone, this is not like a unique, but you were the first person to say it after Jordan Travis goes down. That you cannot use the Kenyon Martin Cincinnati story because basketball has 5 on the court at the same time. And you said football's the ultimate team sport. You got 22 starters. You were 1 through 85. And honestly, if we're talking about, what we saw from Florida State last night, is that they've got a lot of very important players who are very good beyond Jordan Travis that deserve a chance to go compete for a national championship.
Yep.
Michigan is number 1.
Oh man, you're ahead of how?
Yeah.
How are you ahead of me?
Dang it.
Oh, you have it
on?
I'm better than you are. I pay for that high class cable.
I'm like 3 seconds behind.
I just figured the chat would tell us. So somebody will have old school cable on there.
Yeah, but they might psych us out too, and then it'll be really bummed.
That's
listen to me. I'm the only one.
Are they going to go 1?
Oh my God, Illinois is it 2? No.
Are they going to go?
Look at Bielema.
Are they going to go 1-6? They'll go 1-2, then they'll go 6. Like they're going to build as much drama for the 4 spot as they possibly can. I've been in that set.
That's actually pretty smart.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, why wouldn't you? And they've done it before where they've revealed.
Please don't do a commercial break after this.
Oh, they're going to hit a break.
No!
I don't know. They may not.
No, they will.
Right, would we hit a break? We would hit a break.
I would never do that to our listeners. I
Yeah,
respect them too damn much. Number 2, the Washington Huskies.
All right.
By the way, Washington should have been number 1. Like that's ridiculous. That like we're going off resumes, but see, who the heck knows what they're looking at? Washington's resume has been better than Michigan's.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a legit argument for Washington.
And so 1 Michigan, that makes them in the Rose Bowl, right?
They get to choose. They haven't. The screen I'm looking at hasn't declared which one is which, but they do whatever. They might pick Sugar, but come on, man, we're talking about the Michigan Wolverines from the Big Ten.
There's no chance Michigan would choose to play on turf against a team that is closer to New Orleans geographically, regardless of which of the 3 it is.
Oh, whether it's Florida State, Texas, or Alabama.
Right. Like there's 0%. Like if you're Michigan, you want to play further away from those teams on grass. Like Michigan's going to choose the Rose Bowl.
At least not if you're as smart as you're always telling everybody you are.
Yeah.
Number 3, the Texas Longhorns.
Knew it.
Oh man.
Now they go 6.
Now they're going to show us like Georgia at 6, and then they're going to go to commercial for 4 and 5.
Washington, Texas.
So that's the first time they've leapfrogged an undefeated, right?
Yeah.
Again, and they're giving them credit for beating a team that lost to South Alabama at home 33-7 and lost on the road to UCF 45-3, but they're enamored with the style points, how great they looked against them.
Hey, listen, man, easy.
I'm just clearing it up.
Texas looked good.
They absolutely. They looked great. They looked awesome. They didn't look as good as UCF did against them or South Alabama, but they looked great.
Oh, they look good.
They did.
I'm
not saying they didn't.
I'm filling out my my awards ballot. I think I'm going to do Steve Sarkisian as my National Coach of the Year.
Really?
Yeah, you got another while we're sitting here
Texas is
waiting.
back.
Hey, yeah, this is the best season that Texas has had since 2009.
And it's more impressive, strength of record or strength of schedule? Because I have no clue.
They're both
metrics.
ESPN metrics.
Yeah.
Strength of record matters more because it's what you do against the schedule.
Your resume, right? That's more your resume.
Otherwise, congrats to South Carolina for being in the college ball playoff, number one strength of schedule. Right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, strength of record. The premise is what an average team would do against your schedule.
Yep.
I think Florida State's getting screwed. Just for the record.
Danny's terrified right now.
I kind of do too, but a lot I don't think it was a leak with the betting markets this morning. Like an international book opened like some wildly different lines than what your U.S. domestics had, and it looked like everybody just arbitraged the two numbers against each other.
Georgia is at 6.
No surprise,
man.
So it's this is what we thought it was going to be.
That's an excellent podcast right here. Someone's going to listen to this.
Oh man!
All right, come on, ESPN. When I said we'll start at 12:15, I thought we'd have the answers.
So what do they do? Like the beauty pageant? Then they just go 5-4, or do they go 4?
If Florida State is at 4, does McElroy flip the desk?
He's actually been pretty fair. I mean, he's all along been.
Speaking of flipped, his position has flipped pretty hard.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, he was very much like
Alabama's at 4.
Oh man!
Told you.
The games don't matter.
The games don't matter at all. By the way, this will be the first time since 1990 that we've had co-national champions. Because
after Florida State goes to win,
or Georgia, if they're squared up where Brett McMurphy has him, he has them playing in the Orange Bowl. Florida State versus Georgia. Winner of that game's a national champ. So you'll have co-national champs.
Michigan and Alabama in one semifinal, Washington and Texas in the other, Florida State at 5, Georgia at 6. Games don't matter?
Oh, the results don't matter.
Yes, not. All right.
Kind
of the perfect storm of them having cover, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With the format changing, like what they do this year, they don't have to really hold that as precedent for future years because like, it's a different format. That was the 4-team format. Now we're in the 12-team format. So, you know, the networks kind of run the sport, guys. And
the soul of the sport is on trial and it's dying.
The verdict was already out a long time ago. The soul's been lost in the 1950s.
Hey, listen.
Yeah.
They're about to trot out NC State athletic director Boo Corrigan to explain why the ACC.
The ACC did just die.
He doesn't care. The ACC doesn't like Florida State.
The ACC just died. That's the long-term thing of this. It's done. I mean, I've been saying that it's been a dead conference walking all year long, but that was the death blow. They're gone now.
Rough. All right. Coming up on the other side, we will turn our focus to those matchups. Again, Michigan and Alabama in the Rose Bowl, Washington and Texas in the Sugar Bowl, some instant reaction, keys to the game, and more. Next.
You a lawman or an outlaw?
Bit of both, I reckon. Around these parts, we might be men. They're just killers.
You up for the task? I wouldn't be sitting here in my Sunday best if I wasn't. I'm warning you, your wicked days are done.
As we are reacting to the college football playoff announcement, Michigan at 1, Washington at 2, Texas at 3, Alabama at 4. Michigan and Alabama will be in the Rose Bowl on January 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Then the primetime game in New Orleans, Washington and Texas. We'll start with Michigan and Alabama. Boy, I tell you what, Michigan would have loved to see Florida State revealed at number 4.
What? Really?
Wait. Yes? Is that controversial?
No. I disagree.
Okay, let's hear it.
I think Florida State's defense may be the best defense that's out there. They've at least proved that the last couple weeks. Like, it could be easy to score against them. I think Florida State's offensive weapons are better than Alabama's. Like that goes to the whole conversation, which we completely ignored because we got caught up in resume.
What the?
I mean, are they going to be an underdog, Michigan? I mean, if the books
Yes.
loved,
Yes.
Well, I mean,
No,
we'll
they'll
get
be
it.
the underdog. They might not start there, but they will finish there.
Oh, like over the course of between now and January 1, Alabama's just going to get enough action that because Michigan's power rating was better than Alabama's. What 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, roughly around there.
But Penn State, Ohio State. I mean, shoot, we even talked about it. Michigan's 2 touchdown drives last night. Tom, what was it? 11 yards combined?
Yeah, 6 yards and 5 yards.
Yeah. They scored 2 touchdown drives, each of less than 10 yards. And I think that what I believe we have seen in terms of the Michigan power rating is a downgrade just because you don't think that they are as dynamic as they were offensively. Alabama, I think, has been getting upgraded as Jalen Milroe continues to, whether it's heroics, whether it's performance. Tommy Rees getting a little bit better too. That's a 1-4 matchup. That's a little bit eerie when you think about the very first college football playoff semifinal when it was a 1 Alabama against a 4 Ohio State. And, Ohio State was the team that had sort of jumped its way in there, jumping ahead of Baylor and TCU. Now Alabama plays that role. But what are some of your initial thoughts on what that matchup's going to look like?
I mean, if Bama's going to have to win it, they're going to have to run through 2 teams who have a hell of a lot better defensive lines than Georgia does.
Before we get to Washington, Texas, it sounds like you're expecting that Texas is going to win, or like
Texas will close probably around like a 6 or 6.5 point favorite. I would expect
against Washington.
Yes. Right. Look, like we talked really all season, like Georgia did not have the same level of bodies up front that they normally have. I think those guys are on Michigan and Texas this year, and maybe Florida State, but we'll leave that part out. Like, what's the line now? Probably Michigan 2. I would expect for an opener.
Michigan 2.5, Michigan 3. Is that real? What we got in the head? It's the Sugar Bowl. Is Michigan, Alabama?
No. Michigan, Alabama is the Rose.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Washington, Texas is the Sugar, and Cover 3 Tailgate is saying we're looking at Michigan 2.5 or 3, and Texas about 4.5.
If they give you 3 with Michigan or with Bama, you should probably take that. I don't think that's going to last, but a lot of it will come down to who is actually healthy for Michigan. They've been holding out certain guys and still covering despite it. But like they have some offensive linemen who have been out who will matter. What about some of their corners who will matter? It's an interesting matchup. Like how many points can Michigan actually muster? I don't know. Like that Alabama defense is for real. Alabama's offense yesterday kind of luck boxed its way to a win, to be frank. I mean, they had 300 total yards and one score was off like a short field and the other was on probably a missed call, which should have been a 4th down stop. So probably more of a defensive fight in that one, I would expect. We'll see. Like Michigan's defense is not a joke.
Yeah, I mentioned it on last night's show. Michigan's offensive line to me was a legit concern, especially with the Zinter injury, because they were already banged up, and Zinter's not going to be back, and you're losing your starting right tackle. That's not good news, especially when you're going up against now Alabama, has 2 very good edge rushers on the ends of their defensive line. So that is going to be a very interesting matchup. But I do think just looking at both of these teams, like, I mean, Lock's Pod's a month away, but I'm probably taking the under.
Ooh.
I don't know how much success either offense is going to really be able to muster. I have to see what the total is, but I don't think either one of these teams is capable of putting up a big number on the other.
Do we have a total yet for this? Probably like a 47.
I love you, bud.
I'm just trying to ball.
You're probably right. I guess the thing.
It's going to be an interesting game.
Which quarterback would you take?
45.5 for Alabama, Michigan, according to FanDuel. 61.5 total for Washington, Texas. Texas a 4.5 point favorite. Michigan a 2.5 point favorite versus Bama.
Fast track in the Super Bowl. Yeah, exactly.
The one thing that does neutralize everything is Jalen Milroe. Like they haven't faced a dynamic quarterback like him. This will be the best. Because I mean,
Drew Aller and Kyle McCord,
right? Those guys aren't
is
exactly the type of weapons. The weapon that they have. So that's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be a fun matchup.
First of all, you're disrespecting Deacon Hill.
That's right.
You try tackling that guy. Go ahead.
I mean, shout out to Adi. Like Talia is probably the best quarterback in that last 5 weeks of Michigan's schedule. Talia was probably the best quarterback they faced.
No, Kyle McCord and Drew Eller are better than Talia. I know Talia got the Big Ten career record for passing yards, but that was the most empty calorie passing yard career record I've ever seen.
Okay. I mean, empty calories count too. If Bo Nix can play 9 years to become the most career starts leader, then you can get those yards wherever you need them. Good for you. What about Michigan moving the ball in this Alabama defense?
It's hard to expect they will have much success because what we have seen from Michigan against the best defenses it's faced, it has not been nearly as consistent in those games against Penn State and Ohio State as it is against everybody else. And we have seen them hit big plays to help get them points. We have seen them be able to, in the game, establish the run as it wore on, but those were in games where their offensive lines were still mostly healthy. I don't know that they will be able to do that against this Alabama front. It's going to be really tough. I don't know that Michigan has the receivers on the exterior to deal with what Alabama has at corner. The most interesting matchup to me is what will Alabama be able to do against Loveland and Michigan's tight ends? Because I think that's where you're going to have to look. If you're Michigan, to move the ball vertically, you're going to be looking in the seams in the middle of the field, trying to split the safeties and seeing what you can get there. So that will be a key matchup.
Come on, no boys. Well, let's go. I know it stinks.
It's okay, boys.
Sorry, what's the question?
I'm just replying to text. I got my phone's blowing up. Orlovsky's over here mad. He's texting me because I said RG3 put him in a body bag, which he did.
He did.
I will not back away from that.
I didn't know Orlovsky did college. Not well, but good guy. Man, at least RG3's in college.
Again, I'm not. I texted him back. I am more mad at the sham of a system that we call a playoff. And Booger was right. It is a beauty pageant because that's what you've decided now. We've totally deemed irrelevant teams being able to overcome adversity in a quarterback. Because I can't even hear the argument, but I'm sure that's what the committee Boo Corrigan is going to say. Florida State was not the same without Jordan Travis, which is true. But they weren't going to be the same team that we saw last night either, because that was their third string. They're getting back Rodemaker. It's just the system is the thing that's trash.
And that the beauty pageant aspect of it, going back a couple of years now, is why I was so adamant that I never thought Cincinnati would get in. That's why, to me, the biggest surprise they've ever done is put Cincinnati in this thing. Because it's funny how everybody knew a few years ago Cincinnati had no shot against Alabama or whoever it was going to be in the playoff, but they were arguing to put them in. But this year with Florida State, it's well, we can't put them in. They've got no shot. So,
look, I think they got the 4 best teams who won a conference title as they constituted. It's disingenuous to argue on here that none of these teams would be like a dog to FSU, right?
Correct.
To Tom's point, through 12 years, they've never done this. All of a sudden now they're going to actually do the 4 best teams based on power rating plus conference titles, I guess, as opposed to actually earning your way in.
All because Herbie didn't want to blow out.
You know what, though? I respect
a competitive game.
I respect Herbie for being straight up about it when he was saying it. He's like, listen, I've watched so many blowouts. I would rather just have a good game.
Yeah, but to also at the same time claim that he doesn't care about ratings and called him BS. Yeah, sure.
Michigan, Alabama, Texas, and a West Coast team. I mean, if you want to go CFP and on, this is built for television. These matchups on January 1st are built to do a number.
You know what nobody's talking about?
That Nick Saban's going to win and then retire and walk it off?
No, that last year I thought was going to be the year we had 2 Big Ten versus 2 SEC. This year is the year we've got 2 Big Ten versus 2 SEC. So congratulations to the Big Ten and the SEC for getting the entire field in there. It's 2 Big Ten SEC semis.
College football, they like that going into the season, or maybe it was even going into last season. Like whenever anybody did the doomsday of like college football is just going to be the AFC and the NFC, and it's just going to be the SEC and the Big Ten. Like this sure looks like that's what it is. 2 Big Ten and 2 SEC. The Big Ten SEC Challenge.
I'm sorry. Just want to mention that we are one Auburn defensive back blowing his assignment away from this never having been an issue. Yep. And that I'm not going to argue against Alabama being in because like you said, but of the 5 conference champions in a power rating standpoint, these are the 4 best that are in. But there was all this talk after Alabama won last night about how well they played to finish the season ever since that Texas loss. And we were just ignoring the Arkansas game, needing that miracle to beat Auburn. It's like, they didn't play that well. They just kind of they had like an Auburn ass season and got pretty lucky in some spots and won. So yeah, anyways, I don't know.
All right.
Coming up on out of this ACC, I think FSU fans will be happy in the long term.
If this
gets Florida State out of the ACC, I think Florida State fans will look back on this as a fond moment, as a screw job, but one that, like, realistically, you are not going to win the title with Tate Rodemaker. I don't think anybody can but if it gets you out of the ACC,
would you change your opinion on that?
I don't think any FSU fans want to stay in this trash conference. Not like from a quality of play standpoint, but from like a fans don't go to the games. It's not a good experience, that type of thing.
Would you change your opinion if Rodemaker beats Georgia?
No, because I don't think these bowl games are like real indications. I don't put bowl games in my power ratings. I would expect a ton of opt-outs on both sides. Mm-hmm. I don't think these are true indications of what you are, which is one reason why I'm happy for the 12-team playoff, because I don't think we're going to have probably any, but certainly not nearly as many opt-outs in a 12-team system as we do in this, current system.
It's throw in the portal. It's like, are you opting out because you just don't want to play, or are you opting out because you're going to transfer? Like that's what's.
Oh, I meant like draft stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, we're going to have opt-outs in playoff games, 100%, and we'll argue about how. Well, and I've got the tweet bookmarked and saved for when it happens.
Mean-spirited, Tom. Very mean-spirited.
Saying I've kept receipts too. That's all.
All right.
Do you have receipts?
Yeah.
Coming up on the other side, a breakdown of what we're expecting from Washington and Texas in the Sugar Bowl, game 2 of the day on New Year's Day. Next.
We're back for an all-new season of Ink Master.
This is wild.
And 3-time Ink Master winner DJ Tamby returns as a judge.
Guaranteed there's going to be some shots fired.
I gotta watch out back.
You're gonna get it because you talk a lot, bro.
This tattoo is badass.
That is insanity.
This piece is super dynamic. You better strap in and be ready for the ride.
Victory is a work of art. Ink Master, new season, now streaming exclusively on Paramount+.
Alabama and Michigan. Tom, when you think about the Washington-Texas matchup, you hinted earlier that, sure, it looks like an over matchup to you. What about Texas's defense and, what Michael Penix might be able to do? Quinn Ewers coming off a tremendous performance. What are some of the initial thoughts on that matchup between Washington and Texas? Again, Texas favored by about 4.5 right now on the open.
Well, we touched on it a little bit last night when we were kind of just pontificating about potential playoff matchups. Like, Texas's secondary is a bit suspect. The front is fantastic. It might be the best in the country, but the secondary has some holes that you can get to. And then we've talked about how Washington, when its 3 receivers are healthy, there are very few secondaries in the nation capable of covering and stopping all 3 of them. So you've got that matchup of Washington's receivers versus a Texas secondary that's kind of iffy, but you've also got the matchup where Washington has been better, I think, over the second half of the season, or at least more complete as an offense because they've been able to run the ball. I don't know if they'll be able to run the ball nearly as well against this Texas defense. So it could come down to Michael Penix and those three guys having to hit some big plays and shots. On the flip side, you're giving Sark a month to prepare for a team. And we have seen Sark do very, very good things in a week. You give him a month, you give him the talent that he has, and you give him a Washington defense that, while not as bad as I think most of the talk about, or like if you haven't paid super close attention to Washington this year, you probably just assume its defense is bad because it plays in the Pac-12 and there's a lot of high-scoring games. It's better than you think. It's not elite. It's not the kind of defense that I think is going to have a realistic shot of shutting down this Texas offense. So I look at this matchup and I am seeing a game that is going to be 42-38, something like that. It's going to be a really, really fun. I mean, if you look at these two semis, this is the one I would bet on being the most entertaining by far.
I mean, you have to, like, this total has to be in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would think.
62.5.
It's on turf?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is going to be
indoors, no weather.
Yeah. It'll be in the 60s.
And you mentioned Steve Sarkisian. How about give Kalen DeBoer
a
month to prepare? Like these two coaches, it's going to be awesome.
And Washington a month to get healthy. Like that's the thing that I mentioned this several times, like coming into the championship weekend, like if you can just get through this weekend, we've been looking at Washington being like, man, they look banged up. They look hurt. Their receiving core, Penix, all of it. They get a month to get healthy. You might get the version of that offense you saw in the first month of the season.
This is a game. If you're a defender on Texas or Washington, you're not going to want this to be on your draft tape.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to get cooked for the most part.
Well, and it's so funny. You were talking there about the Washington defense, and I was just remembering the opening stages of the Pac-12 championship game when Bo Nix is running for his life. And that's an offensive line that we talked about as one of the best in the entire country. And Washington was able to get pressure, get penetration, and really make Bo Nix uncomfortable in a way that they were behind the sticks and then third and long scenarios. I mean, Oregon could not put together any kind of drive early on in that game. It was an impressive showing, from a Washington defense that had been, we went from Jimmy Lake, which was offense optional coaching, right? You still had some of those, highly talented players. You didn't have the monsters on the defensive line. You had good edge rushers. You had enough players that you knew that they could flip a switch. And it looked like, at least in that Pac-12 title game early on, they had a good plan to be able to win those battles. And that'll be a big challenge going up against another good offensive line in the Texas Longhorns. Anything else on Washington, Texas?
I mean,
cool color matchup.
Texas is potentially going to New Orleans and then Houston.
Yeah,
friendly,
I mean,
friendly sites for the Texas Longhorn fan base.
I mean, that's with Michigan has to travel way out to the West Coast, but at least they have to drag Alabama across the country with them. Washington's got to fly across the country to New Orleans, where it's going to be playing a Texas team that is very close to home. So it's a bad spot.
I think like the happiest team is Texas.
Yes.
Yeah. Correct.
Like I don't think Bama's overjoyed about playing Michigan.
No.
Like, I mean, they'll probably go off as a small favorite, but like Michigan's going to bang you for sure. And like that won't be easy.
We also have one of our shortest turnaround semifinal at the title game that you can possibly have with January 1st and the 8th. Sometimes it has been as many as like 10,
13,
13 days.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We also don't know the status of Xavier Worthy. So in the post game, Steve Sarkisian said that the x-rays were negative and he's fine. I'm going to take him at his word for that, right? If I was a coach, I would say that regardless of whether he was fine or not, just to make sure my team gets in. Kind of like I thought Florida State should have done the Aaron Rodgers, he's coming back in 3 weeks type thing with.
Or just lied.
With Jordan
Just
Travis.
lied
Right.
about it. Just kept him under wraps. Today he's rehabbing. They would have been better off.
Exactly. So in some ways, from a power rating standpoint, clearly this is the best matchup for Texas. Style-wise, it is arguably the worst.
Ooh.
in terms of Washington's ability to throw the football around.
And trade paint, exploit your weakness.
Yeah, like Washington's pass game is way better than Alabama's and way better than Michigan's. So, like, if you're Texas, you got to get through this. If you get through this, I think you actually match up extremely well against the other two because your bigs are just as good as Bama's bigs, I think, and just as good as Michigan's bigs.
Do you want to see an Alabama-Texas rematch?
We could finally find out who's better.
Oh, they play?
Because again, we've already determined that. I mean, some results matter, some don't. It depends. What it depends on, that's gray area.
Should I say this?
Say it.
Yeah.
If you have to, as long as it's not,
don't.
So y'all are going to join softball. Y'all are going to join softball teams next year, right? And we're not going to do that Tuesday night show and pretend these rankings matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I ain't into that. I mean, I already didn't do it, but like, it's fakery every week.
Yeah.
I want to say, speaking of that kind of energy, I've seen a lot of people in the comments saying they're done with college football after this. I don't believe you.
They'll be back.
I think you'll be right back.
I do think Florida State fans might not go to the Orange Bowl.
I don't know. If we can sell this as a national title game, I think they will.
Man,
there is an SEC opponent. If you go 3-0 against the SEC and you have a common opponent, two common opponents, and you beat Georgia by more than Bama did, and Bama wins it, I think you have a legitimate claim to the national championship.
Devin, I
always
the camera of Mike Norvell and the team live.
Yeah, I catch a lot of heat every year because I cry about the preseason rankings. This is exactly why they matter. Like the perception of your conference is shaped from the get-go by everyone. Like the SEC had the worst record against non-conference opponents than any of the Power Fives. And yet at the end of the season, we're talking about ranked wins and how impressive the conference is, even though there's no metric that says that. Bud had an outstanding video that you should go check out that gave their best wins. And it's a joke because they don't have any. And they still get the benefit.
They do. I mean, look.
Get out of your poverty conference, boys. Join a real one.
I think it's telling how like Fox's broadcast of the Big Ten title game is praising what an excellent defensive battle it is.
Yeah.
Like, Fox is promoting its product.
Yep.
Tessitore and Jesse Palmer are up there acting like it's beneath them to call the ACC title game. Like, if you guys don't want to do it, you can probably find somebody who wants to do it. There's a lot of good broadcasters out there.
When was the last time Herbstreit didn't call the ACC championship?
Yeah, but he's so busy now. Like, come on. That's not.
I mean, it hasn't stopped him before from getting on his jet and making it there. He's
With
always
the
busy
dog.
this weekend. Always busy. Yeah.
But didn't he do Friday?
He did Friday. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Any other words on Washington and Texas? We can't help ourselves. We just keep cycling back, and we're gonna start spinning in circles pretty soon. Anybody else got any thoughts on the Washington Texas matchup?
It was a great Alamo Bowl a few years ago. I'd be thrilled if it's anything like that game.
Wasn't that last year?
No, there was one. Or you know what? I'm confused. I'm thinking of Washington Baylor, the Alamo Bowl game with RG3 in them a few years ago. Sorry, my bad. There was a Texas Washington Alamo Bowl, but it was a different one.
Nick Saban's so happy. He's smiling.
I'm happy Nick finally got something good in his life.
Yeah, he finally got the break he needed.
It's about time that Nick Saban and Alabama have caught a break. Nothing ever goes their way. Man, he's. All right. Anything else? No. Yes. No. Sad Noble. This is making me sad.
It's just, again, it goes back to the players. I'm so pissed for the players.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I feel bad for those guys.
Think about Jordan Travis. Puts his body on the line, everything out there, lost. All for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tom's tweet said it right, though. Like, we can stop pretending the games matter.
Yep.
Some games matter.
We'll still talk about them. Damn it.
Yeah, we'll still talk about them.
Listen,
but I think
if you
a lot of
drag
people will
me
lose
out
faith in the
to
sport.
talk about fake rankings every Tuesday night with all my Chipalytics figured out and strength of schedule ratings, even if the games don't matter according to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, I will find them interesting and make them interesting every Saturday night. Tuesday night shows are on the chopping block, DK. I do think that we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
I just want to say
driving
one thing.
around trying to get my kids from practice, get home in time for the reaction show, and it doesn't matter.
I just want to make a plea to the listeners, to the people watching, college football fans in general, and this is the basis of what I have. It's been part of the foundation of my complaints the entire time. Don't let them devalue conference titles. Don't let them devalue beating your rival. Don't let them devalue the feeling that you have every Saturday during the fall watching your favorite team play, win, lose, whatever. Do not devalue that just because television networks want you to think that the only thing that matters is winning a national title in a college football playoff system that has no real kind of guidelines set down to determine the teams other than we get in a room at the end of the year and we pick the teams we think should be in it. It doesn't matter. The national title is not the most important thing in this sport. It has never been the most important thing in this sport. Your relationship with the sport is more important than anything. Your relationship with your rivals, your relationship with your conference. Keep that at the forefront. Don't worry about this bullshit because that's all it has ever been. And that was proved finally and emphatically today.
Love that. Good note to go out on. We will be back Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Tom's about to, get his fingers ready.
Bud and Danny are sad now. Look at me in 3 hours.
Today bowl rankings?
Yeah,
Yes.
He's about to rank every single bowl game. Those bowl rankings and more just general bowl thoughts will be the topic of conversation for Mondays upon further review, as well as getting to hear some of the reaction. We've been live with you for the last 45 minutes, so we get to hear from coaches. We get to hear from athletic directors, have a little bit more response there. So again, upon further review, bowl rankings edition, Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Pernell. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.